So have you seen trends in self-funding just with all your MBA exposure and some of these different events you've been to? Did you find any examples at the BYU ETA event where you're kind of like, oh, that blew my mind. I didn't know you could structure a deal like that, or man, I never even thought about that business model. How did you self-fund your whole MBA and your search that you're going through right now? All right, so this episode we have with James Lincoln. James is absolutely fantastic. We're actually going to dive into his background, of course, because he's got a fascinating background spinning up a couple different businesses, micro SaaS, to doing health system stuff in Texas, managing their SaaS portfolio, to getting his MBA. And that's really what we're going to dive into. Is I've never really been a big proponent of getting MBAs. I actually went and was involved on stage at the BYU here in Salt Lake area. ETA event, and we actually dive into it. And James actually put this event on, so he just graduated with his MBA. And a couple things that we're going to dive into within this is how this event was unique. Some of the trends that we're seeing in just the search space. And one of the things that was interesting at this event, of the 250 people that were there, a big chunk of them, about half of them, were actually not doing traditional search funds, but doing self-funded search, right? So a lot of investors, a lot of people who had already built, bought, and sold businesses, or bought businesses, then built them, and then sold them again. It was really, really good. And we actually dive into how he funds his own search. Because I think this is an important piece that a lot of people forget is you have to be able to be in a certain situation to actually fund your search to buy a business. So we dive into a little bit of what he's done on his agency, and it's been crazy impressive what he's done in a year and a half, and I think it's going to make your jaws drop. So anyways, with that, a couple of things that we're going to talk about here at the bottom. cougaracquisitions.com is where you can learn more. And then, of course, James_Lincoln, Twitter, links below in the bio, and you can learn more about him. So let's jump into the episode. All right, James, we are live. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Stoked to do this.
So, James, I know you've been a listener to the show. You and I connected on a variety of fronts. You're based here in Salt Lake City. We're gonna dive into some fun things, right? You put on a big event here locally through your MBA program. We're gonna dive into that. But before we dive into the fun stuff, tell us a little bit about your background, James. How you got to this point? Why'd you get an MBA? All the fun stuff.
Yeah. So I graduated. I grew up in New York. Came out to Utah to do an undergraduate degree. Finished that in 2019, and I did it in psych, which I'm like classic psych degree. Didn't have anything to do after school. I thought I could go be an SDR somewhere, or I could go to grad school. And I decided instead I was just going to start a business. I'm like, I think I'll learn more starting a business. So I moved out to California, started a little micro SaaS company back when getting Google reviews was all, there were a ton of companies popping up doing software to get businesses Google reviews. And I did that for a year and a half. It was pretty successful, right? Still runs today. We still push off some revenue today. But I moved down to Texas when my wife and I got.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this just a maintenance mode? It's amazing what SaaS can do.
Literally hasn't looked. I haven't looked at it in 2 years. It's just,
and people just
it doesn't make a lot. It doesn't make a lot of money. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of money. But I golf, and it pays for my phone bill, and anytime I go out to eat, I'm
you're right.
Covered.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I moved down to Texas when my wife and I got pregnant, and kind of started adulting down there when we had our first little daughter. Got a job at a health system down in Texas, one of the big health systems down in Texas, doing software portfolio management. And that was killer gig, right? Awesome W-2. I had phenomenal mentors that gave me a lot of flexibility to work on cool stuff. And then I kind of got the itch again. That was through COVID, and I got the itch to be an entrepreneur again. I'm like, there's just not enough upside here. This is a 10-year path to be making real money. And I learned about buying businesses through a brother-in-law. Actually, he called me up and said, "Oh, I've got this business under contract." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What does that mean?" And read the books, started listening to this podcast, and it just it clicked. I'm like, this makes so much sense. I did the startup thing. I didn't love the start, especially in the SaaS space, but I'm like, I could get behind buying boring businesses. And I actually found a golf course for sale on BizBuySell. It was probably a terrible deal, but I'm like, this looks incredible. I'm like, it'd be so fun to own a golf course. And I'd been telling my wife about like the idea of buying, and then I come to her and I'm like, hey, I'm going to put an offer on this thing. And she pumped the brakes and said, you need to get an MBA before you go buy a business. She wanted me to get one. I'm like, I always
Yeah.
wanted to get one. And that was May or April 2022. And I don't know how much like about the MBA, or like how much your listeners know about MBA cycles, but normally you'd be like applying to MBA programs in like the fall before you go, right? So like if I wanted to go in
Almost a year in
2023, I'd
advance.
apply.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, man, I'm not waiting 18 months to go apply to programs. So I called up BYU, and they have a great MBA program. It was just past their deadline. I was like a few days past their deadline, but I called them up and I said, hey, I want to come this fall and do an MBA. And like I already took the GMAT. Can I apply? And they said, yeah. And a week later I was accepted, and we moved 2 months later. So we kind of picked ourselves up out of Texas and moved to Utah for the MBA. So I just finished up a week ago. During the MBA program, I started a digital marketing agency to cash flow to support my family, and mainly to be able to fund my search for a business post graduation. So that's gone really well, and the program was awesome. And like you said, we got to do some great events around acquisition, entrepreneurship, and just yeah, that's my background.
James, that's awesome, man. So let's dive into the event you threw on. You put together a wonderful event, I don't know, a month or two ago, whenever it was. And it was the BYU ETA event, entrepreneurship through acquisition. You put it on, I don't know if you put it on, but the BYU MBA program has put it on the last couple of years, but you had an insane amount of people. It's 250 people that were there at this event. Let's dive into this event and like some of our key takeaways, because I was involved in the event. Appreciate you getting me involved, but it was such a unique event, and I thought it stood out for a variety of reasons. But like, let's just dive into and like tell us about the event.
Yeah, so it's the third time we've done it. I was involved the second year, and then this year, right? So it's generally been run by students. Taylor, I'll give a shout out to Taylor Henderson. He started it 3 years ago. They had like 50 people that showed up. Year two, we had about 90 people that showed up, and then this year, right, the third year, back in March, we had 200. We'll say 250. It was somewhere between 250 260 at our peak in the day. So like it's grown like crazy. Generally put on by students. I'm actually going to be staying on part time at BYU to continue putting this conference on, and pushing some of the initiatives around ETA. So we'll have students leading it in the future, but yeah, it was a killer event. I've gone to other MBA ETA events. That was something that, as part of putting this on, we said, let's go out and see what the market's doing around ETA events at MBA programs. And it was very unique in that most of the MBA program ETA events are attracting, and I haven't been to all, right? Like Harvard, it's like 1,000 people. I mean, I didn't get out to that one. But some of the ones I've gone to, like they're mostly attracting students from the MBA program that want to learn about search, and they're attracting like service providers and investors that want to bring on search fund, like searchers for search funds. Whereas at BYU, our conference was primarily alumni and professionals that have actually gone and acquired businesses, or are self-funding a search to acquire a business. So of the 260 or 250 people that registered, 120 of them reported themselves as actively searching for a business. So we had a ton of active
That's half.
searchers.
That's 50% of them are
Half. I know
searching.
it was awesome. And so it was a phenomenal networking event. It brought people together that hadn't seen each other in a long time. There have actually been deals that have come out of the event in both of the past 2 years. There have been deals that just people got together and were talking, and it's like opportunities have come up. So it was a killer event. A lot of the programming we had was around operating and searching. So there was like kind of a track for both. It's like if you want to if you're in the middle of your search, here's like some feedback on how to do that. If you're, if you've already bought, if you're thinking about selling in the future, if you're just running something you started, like we've got some operational tracks for you as well. And in the future, we actually want to have an owner track, right? So like really, or something really geared towards people that want to sell, right? So it's like we'll have a business owners. We're going to market it to business owners, specifically alumni of BYU primarily. I think that's like the easy reach from like reaching business owners at least. And so we'll have like ultimately the goal is to bring the parties all together, right? Where it's like you've got people that want to sell their businesses, you got people that want to buy businesses, you got people operating businesses that might be looking for operators or roll ups or anything, and we just bring them all together at this awesome event.
I think we should bring them all together, give them a bunch of balls in the middle, have one side full of buyers, one side full of sellers, and have them run to the middle and just play dodgeball. Last man standing, they do a deal, they just do it over again. So,
Yeah.
um, well, one thing that stood out to me, James, at the event was I've been to some of these events. You've been a lot of actually specific MBA MBA ETA events. Um, there were a lot of self-funded searchers, and it's sort of a
Mhm.
community that might be a little bit overlooked. Look, there's pros and cons to being your traditional search fund, going your self-funded route. There were a lot of people who were self-funded. In fact, like the first four people I talked to when I walked in were all self-funded. So, have you seen trends in self-funding? Just with all your MBA exposure and some of the different events you've been to.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about BYU. Like the other conferences I've gone to, that's not the case, right? Like it's primarily people are like, I'm gonna go get into a search fund. Like that's my plan post MBA, right? And they probably decide that halfway through their MBA program, maybe like post internship. They're like, oh, I learned about search funds. I'm gonna go raise a search fund. And I'm gonna do that. At BYU, that's just not the case. Like I think we've had from the MBA program at BYU, maybe like 2 or 3 search funds ever that came out of the program. And one of them came like he was a couple of years removed after he went and did investment banking. Um, and I mean, I think there's pros and cons to that. Frankly, from my opinion, as I think about like, oh, how do we build this ecosystem up at BYU? We have to have a little bit more around traditional search. Like there has to be more search fund because self-funded is like you got to be in a unique situation to be able to self-fund. And by excluding traditional search or acquihire or like, even just going and being an operator and like getting like a small equity package as an operator, like by excluding that from our ecosystem, we're like cutting people out that otherwise could just go kill it, right? But it's just
And you
to
also
this
cut out the
point has
investors.
has
Like,
you
sorry,
do.
I think also you cut out the investors because and that's where a lot of times people have gone out, done it, sold their business, and come back, or have their businesses and they actually want to invest in the entrepreneurs who are going through this phase again. And that adds so much more to the ecosystem.
Yeah.
They're giving back almost to where they were a few years prior.
Yeah, it that's absolutely true, and we need to be involving. Part of it may be just that in Utah, like there's not really many search fund investors in Utah. I mean, there's obviously going to be like private investors that will put money into search funds, but we've got Peterson up in Salt Lake, and there may be maybe Mercado like put some money into search funds. I can't even remember, but it's primarily Peterson, and they've mainly invested in like Stanford MBA grads. But I mean, they're just up the road. Like we need to get them involved. We need to get other search fund investors involved and showcase like that's part of building the ecosystem. And that's where it's a stark opposite. I'd say at other schools, what I saw is like the same problem, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so it's like if you don't have people that are going and self-funding, like you're missing part of the ecosystem where obviously if you can afford to self-fund, like go do it. And you're going to come away with far better economics. You may have a better work-life balance because you're not beholden to investors. You can buy different businesses. And that's one of the problems I see with search funds all the time is it's like you'll find a great business, but your search fund investors don't want to buy it. And it's like, well, I'd love to buy this personally. I could like go do this myself, but it's too small for the search fund investors. And so you just like the deal dies. And like, where does that deal go? Who knows? Like that's a bummer. It was like a good deal that just fell apart because the search fund couldn't buy it for size reasons. So I think you got to have all pieces in a healthy ecosystem.
Well, and you were telling me one thing that not just BYU has done, but other universities are doing too, is they always have some funds allocated to starting a business, doing research, internships, or whatever that might look like. They're actually diverting some of the funds to MBA students like yourself to go on their own search, right? And so maybe because BYU is actually funding searchers to do this on their own, as if they were going to go start their own business, it spurred that you know maybe leaning more towards self-funded search than it is to traditional.
Yeah, and to that point, right? Like you're not raising a search fund till after your program. Like no search fund is going to say, yeah, here's like 120 grand. Like go do your MBA and search right at the
While
same
you're at
time. Like that
school.
doesn't happen. Yeah, where like at BYU. I mean, there's been it's really interesting to see because like BYU traditionally has been so focused on like venture backed SaaS startups. And I think they're realizing like the hit rate on that is really low. And like our students, like we're doing a disservice to students by not exposing them to other avenues to entrepreneurship that may have a much higher success rate. And like we all know it does. Acquisition entrepreneurship has a far higher success rate than starting a venture backed SaaS company. And so there's been a shift in curriculum, specifically in the MBA program and funding, right, away from like the startups and into the search. So for example, I mean, like you can do at BYU, you can do like a third of your credits just for searching, right? So it's like you do a full-time semester, your first semester, and every other semester after that is part-time. And over the summer, I say part-time, right? Like, you're working with a mentor through your search and you're spending time searching. But every semester after that, it's like you're taking some core classes that will help you operate a business and you're getting credit for searching for that business. And over the summer, you're getting, I think this year was the first year we did it. It was like $15,000, right? It was like, what's a decent MBA internship pay over 3 months? And it's like, let's just kind of match that price point. We're a little bit lower, um, you know, than, maybe like an MBA could go out and make it a great internship. But I'm like 15 grand over the summer to go search and then come into your second year, you're essentially getting 12 to 15 months of search under your belt before you even graduate. So like I've got a classmate who just bought just closed on it, or the deal hasn't officially closed, but waiting on some regulatory uh timing stuff to get it closed. And he did it during the program. So you're right. Like if you can search during the program, it kind of removes the need for having investors to fund your paycheck.
Talking about a deal that's waiting for regulatory issues is like talking about a no hitter in like the eighth inning. So it's
I
like,
know. Yeah, you
let's not
can't
touch
say it.
it. So,
Well, we got
so
to cut that out. Yeah.
another example though, James, is like so talk about some of the interesting people that were there at this ETA event. One guy 15 years ago, he was the keynote, right? We'll see if we can get him on the show, but we'll leave him anonymous for now. But basically, bought a very small manufacturing business, very very small, like way smaller than any book you've ever read or any podcast has ever told you to buy. Right, very small business, and was able to scale it year over year over year. Eventually, got into Walgreens and doing nine figures in revenue, had a private equity exit in like a 10 to 15 year span, right? But this was actually a business that was pretty small, and he did most of his search while in school, while getting an MBA, right? And so I think that's actually a really interesting piece. Is maybe not everybody's thinking about the amount of reps you can get while getting your MBA. And I think one of the things too, and I've always been a proponent of like, hey, don't get your MBA. I barely got out of school with a degree, James. So it's like, I'm like, don't get an MBA. But at the same time, when you are a student, it gives you the leeway to email anybody and they feel obligated to help you. And it's just, I'm 38, I can't email anybody and be like, yo, you want to help me out with this thing? But if you're like, hey, I'm a student, I'm doing this, this, and this, and like you can leverage it into it and do some really interesting things. So I felt like some of the examples that were actually there at the ETA conference were really fascinating because they were all the way from there was one guy who had a private equity background rolling up, like hundreds of dental practices, hundreds. And there was another guy who had like 30 Jersey Mikes or something crazy like that, and got in on the Jersey Mike trend in an area before it took off. And I think these events, if anything else, sometimes I avoid these events because I'm like, I just need to like build stuff and do what I'm doing. But sometimes you can actually rub shoulders with people who are going to shift the way you think and give you some new examples of how you're going to view things. So did you find any examples at the BYU ETA event where you're kind of like, oh, that blew my mind. I didn't know you could structure a deal like that. Or, man, I never even thought about that business model.
Yeah, I probably was running around a little too much to really like
You
soak
put
up
it on. You're
any
stressed.
specific content. But I mean, like to your point, like you realize there are so many different ways to be an entrepreneur and specifically to be an acquisition entrepreneur. I came away from that to speak about Jersey Mike's. Like I came away from that and I got to know that guy pretty well, like and since we've, gotten to know each other even better. Like I look at franchises now. I never would have looked at franchises, but I'm like, man, like what a simple process for like getting like that's essentially an acquisition, right? You're putting money up front, you're building it from scratch, but you've got everything laid out in front of you. I'm like that's a killer opportunity if you find the right franchise. Like, so yeah, looking at franchises now, I think just the different ways that these people are pulling deals together, again, from like the big roll-ups to, I think we had somebody from Frazzle, the 7-Eleven. No, not the 7-Eleven. I think Slurpee's 7-Eleven, but you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. It was like
the
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 other
gas station
version.
Slurpee. Well, so after the conference, I was like, I got to go check Frazzle out, right? Because like that was a BYU guy that I think he's got like an independent sponsor model or something. I can't even say, I don't know exactly what it is, but he bought Frazzle, and I'm like, I got to go check this place out. So I went up to the warehouse a couple weeks ago up in North Salt Lake, and I was blown away at the scale of Frazzle. I mean, like insane, insane. It's like I couldn't even ballpark the square footage of that warehouse, and it was filled to the roof full of powder that they send out. And like it blew my mind. And I'm like, this is literally buying and building, right? And again, to go back to the keynote we had on the manufacturing, where he got into Walgreens, he bought this tiny deal. It's like he literally was buying, like that's the definition of buying and building. He wasn't buying and holding and relying on the cash flow. He bought a foundation, a platform, and just went to town building. And I'm like, that's really cool.
You could
So
argue
it
that
was
he
it was
bought
a
a
great
really bad
conference. And
job. Yeah, like he
I
bought a
know
bad
he
job.
did
He
buy
was
a
so
bad job.
small.
Probably a fun job, but
Yeah, well, he's laughing now, right? So no, I think all of us would have been like,
yeah.
"Oh, it's too small, it's too small." But sometimes you need that visionary to buy, then build, and go all in on it. When you think about these events and just the overall trends, one of the things you mentioned early on is in order to be a self funder, you have to be in a special situation. I feel like you've done. I know you better than the audience, of course, but I know that you have done some things on the side, have businesses on the side that you built that have allowed you to search, allowed you to get your MBA, and probably actually make money and come out even further ahead rather than going into debt $250,000, which compared to most MBAs. So, how did you self fund your whole MBA and your search that you're going through right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I came into the MBA program with the goal of like, I'm buying a business, which made it so much better because I was like dialed in, right? I'm like, I'm not going to info sessions. I'm not applying to jobs. I'm like, I'm dialed in. So, my first semester, I actually had a deal under contract. It was a little deal. They manufactured wooden boxes, and it was a very motivated seller, right? There was a death in the family, and like, they needed to sell the business. Um, and so I worked on that deal that whole first semester, and then ended up kind of falling through, and there was some negative, not negative, it fell through. Like it was fine that it fell through, but like what that taught me was like I wasn't as prepared to buy as I thought I was from a cash standpoint, right? To the point where like I had to go get a W-2 to get a HELOC to like pay for the down payment I needed on the business. Cause I'm like, I didn't have the cash. It was like 90% seller financed, but I'm like, I needed some cash.
And you
And I'm
can't
like,
get
I
a
couldn't get a
HELOC without
HELOC
a
without a
W
W
two.
2.
Yeah,
Oh no. And then I was
yeah.
stuck in a W-2 for 6 months. I'm like, oh yeah, it was a total headache. But so I came away from that and thought, man, that was cool. Like great experience, but I've got to find a way to make some money. And so it was like February of 2023. I just like doubled down on or like I was like I committed to just starting a digital marketing agency. I mentioned I'd started that micro SaaS company back in the day, and so I kind of knew some of the principles of like Google business profiles and like how to work that local SEO algorithm, and I knew how to reach those customers. And so I was like, I'll start this, and like this will be my way to cash flow. And so rather than searching over the next, like it's been 12 months, rather than searching, I've actually taken a step back and just built that agency up to where now I've got cash flow coming in. I built a team here in the US. I've got a team offshore, and I operate this thing with a handful of hours a week of managing my team, and I have got the cash flow to be able to fund a search, right? Which was the goal. I might not have the cash flow I need to go like again put down $200,000-300,000 on a business, but we'll get there over time. And more than anything, it just buys me time to search.
And here's the secret right now. Like it's 2024. It's not 2017, right? There are so many more investors and so many more people who want to invest in this space and trying to diversify their own portfolios. But somebody of your caliber and your pedigree and your network, because you did a really good job of putting on all these events over the last couple of years and being the face of it, you could raise money really quickly. And I think it's not crazy to think that you could put 1% of the total value of the business down and then raise money for the other 9 to 20% that you need down before you go out and get a loan. So I think the myth of like, oh, I need to have all the money down payment. I think you'd give out a very small percentage of the business and then not have to, liquidate liquidate all of your liquid capital to just buy the business. And that's such a different place than where it was a couple years ago, where that wasn't even an option. People weren't even thinking about that before. So, James, where can people find you and follow you? Where can they learn more about your agency for now?
Yeah. I guess, if you want to like learn more about an MBA program or what we're doing at BYU, cougaracquisitions.com, you can go on there and get on our mailing list so that like we send out events to you and stuff. If people just want to hit me up, I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Twitter is like _ James Lincoln, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'm always down to talk to anybody about anything. So this is like you said, the network. I found what you said to be true about the network. It's like the network is so valuable, and I'm like, if anybody ever wants to talk, I'm down to talk. I got a lot of time,
Awesome.
so I just
We'll
how do
link,
I
we'll link,
allocate it?
we'll link to that. Cougar Acquisitions, James Lincoln, James_Lincoln. Last question. What's the weirdest way you've seen someone make money?
Weirdest way I've seen someone make money. I my dad has a friend who this isn't that weird, but like he has a friend who he goes and does like those pallet auctions. He was living out in New York and like would store stuff in his garage and just
Like
like buy
Amazon,
stuff at auction.
like they get all the
Yeah, like
returns and then
Amazon,
like, okay.
Costco, like all of it, right? It was like he'd go to like the storage house, like the storage warehouses and pick stuff up. And there was like this big like solar scam. Like somebody like I think that maybe they like went to jail over this like solar scam, but they actually like built these like solar panels that like were portable solar panels. And he like bought a semi truck full of those and like sells those. Um, but yeah, so now he actually came out to Utah and has like a warehouse down south, like down south of Payson, and like bought a warehouse. And so now he like has a full warehouse full of just stuff he buys and then resells them. Like I saw somebody else on Twitter doing this too with Costco. I'm like, what a cool little like thing I never thought about. You go buy like a Bowflex or whatever they make nowadays for,
Whatever
it retails
Bowflex
for like
is.
$5,000 and you can get it for like 1,200 from Costco's auction and you resell it for 25. Yeah, that's kind of that's a way to hustle.
I
Like
just,
talk
I
about like
just,
Facebook Marketplace to the next level.
I just found out my weekend plans. I'm gonna take my 8-year-old and go buy some pallets worth of crap. So I'm gonna return a report on that one. So James, it's been
All
a pleasure,
right,
man. We'll
perfect.
link to all this in the show notes. Appreciate your time today, and if you're interested in anything James is doing, follow him and reach out.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
All right. Thanks for checking out the Let's Buy a Business channel. If you want to learn more, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest tips on acquiring businesses. We've also got our newsletter, which you can also subscribe to here, where you want to get the latest tips and deals that are happening right now. These are live deals. And then, of course, with the link below, you can join our course and memberships for the most serious searchers out there and you want to get serious results.